Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. And welcome to the CISO Corner, where we talk about all things data security and compliance. I'm Dane Dittamore with DataBank, and joined, of course, by DataBank's Chief Information Security Officer, Mark Houpt. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning, Dane. I am doing fine. I noticed you didn't say good night. So let's just hope that people are not listening to this in the middle of the night. Unless they need to get a few Z's, then, I might be able to put them to sleep. Who knows?
Some of them do listen to us in the evening. I
That's
noticed that.
good.
Yeah, yeah, they find this extremely informative.
Hmm.
Well, for today's topic, I'm going to ask you to take us back to school.
Well, Dane, I love learning. You should see how many books I have on my desk right now. So what do you have in mind? What should we learn about today? And who's going to be the teacher, me or you?
I think you're going to be the teacher.
Ah, okay.
You're going to take us back to school, and our listeners will be the students. How's that?
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to be the professor. All right, let's go.
You are the professor
All
in
right.
my mind. So when we talk about negative occurrences with data, we tend to use the term security event, security incident, and security breach interchangeably.
Yeah, that's pretty much accurate. But they're very different. And I would say even there's a lot of people out there that just call all of them security incidents, and they really don't understand, unfortunately, sometimes what they're talking about.
Right. Well, exactly. If you will, walk us through those differences by start by explaining what's important to know
All right.
about the differences between them.
Okay. So first of all, you're correct. There is a difference between a security event, a security incident, and a security breach. Okay. Now let's go. So since I get to teach, let's really dive into this a little bit. Where do we get those terms from is very important anytime that you're doing a really a teaching type of scenario, so that our students can go do additional research and additional discussions internally on their own with the topic. So you can find these terms inside of multiple NIST special publication documents, okay, on incident response and so on and so forth. So the definitions that I'm going to use are coming from the NIST, the National Institutes of Science and Technology, who has defined what these mean for the U.S. federal government. So if they're good enough for the federal government, I know a lot of people like to shy away from the federal government, but if they're good enough for the U.S. federal government to call these definitions what they are, then they're good enough for me, because I do actually like the fact that the government puts in a lot of research on this. But let's sit down and talk about what they are. All right, so very bottom line is security event is something going on a server or a system network, even a physical security scenario that might be a security related item. Okay, but it doesn't have to necessarily be somebody that's attacking in, and it could be something that we are rebuffing if they are trying to attack in, and we're able to push them back through security controls or some other form of mitigation. So a security event is when, let's say, a server starts getting a little bit slow, and we take a look at that, and the result is because we put a security patch on the server, and that security patch has caused overload on the system. That's not an attacker coming in, but it is security related because we put a security patch on there. So we call that an event. An event usually doesn't mean that we have to report it. It doesn't mean that we have to, send information, for example, to if we're a HIPAA entity, sending it to the Department of Health and Human Services. It's just something that happened that was related to security that didn't result in an active attack, or it could be a result of just configuration error, things like that. So we see those types of things happen all the time on the network. Another, not to spend too much time on it, but another one of those is, let's say you've got antivirus running on your system, and it picks up a file that it believes has a malware in it, and it tags it, and it slows down your system, or it prevents you from accessing it, and it was a false positive. That would be a security event. We correct it, we move on. All right.
Well, how
Now,
about a security incident then.
Yeah. So security incidents, when we take that a little bit farther and we say, okay, the event occurred, but as through the investigation, we found out that in fact that antivirus product, or that anti-malware product, picked up a file that did have a virus on it. And now we've got an action that we need to take. We need to do some investigation
Right.
of how that got into the environment and what impact it's having on an environment. Another one of these is, lots of times a DDoS attack, where it's actually taken down the server or taken down the environment. That would rise to the level of security incident. And again, that is not necessarily reportable outside of your organization, but it is a KPI that you should manage and you should record within your organization, because a security incident is when you're going to initiate your incident response plan. The security event, you might not initiate your incident response plan, but with an incident, you definitely will. And you would go through your plan, which is in my plan, and NIST plan is 5 different key steps on going through there. So detection all the way to recovery and debrief.
Yep.
And then I'm guessing you want to know what security breach is that's different from all that, right?
Well, you're the professor, so
All
let's hear
right,
it.
so let's hear it. So you kind of notice there was a little bit of escalation between an event and an incident. Well, a breach takes it to that next level. And the key difference with security breach is 2 things. Number one, the attackers have been successful and gotten access to data or other confidential, not public type of information. All right. So underneath a security incident, the attackers may be attacking you, but because you had encryption, they were not able to take control of the data. They were not able to gain access to the data, so we can maintain that as a security incident. But if the encryption wasn't in place and they gained access to the data and then they exfiltrated the data or they got their eyes on it, then that level moves to the security breach. But the other key thing about a security breach on top of that is that security breach is a legal term. And this is one of the reasons that we don't like to use security breach. We don't like to declare a breach, is because when that data has been impacted in the way that I just talked about, then the legal term kicks off legal requirements for reporting. So under HIPAA, for example, you have to report not only to the individual who's had their data breached. For every single record, you have to report to those people, but you also have to report to the Department of Health and Human Services. Okay, how many breaches you've had. Under PCI, under California consumer privacy laws, you have to report to the individual that their data has been breached, and then that triggers a whole bunch of other steps, such as credit monitoring and so on and so forth down the line. So we try to stay away from security breach. We try to keep it within that incident. We try to keep it out of the legal side of things. So when you cross that line from incident to breach, you're crossing the line from an internal action that is just an incident response scenario to a legal action that becomes an external reportable type of event. And also it crosses the line between confidential information being accessed or viewed or taken versus that actually happening under a breach. So
Well, that's
those are the
yeah,
issues there.
that's critical because obviously in HIPAA, by not reporting a breach, there are fines, significant
Exactly.
fines. So you run into the breach and money are
Mm-hmm.
kind of an interchangeable sort of a
Yep.
thing.
And
It's
and it's most of the time it's fines like GDPR, HIPAA, California. It's per record, and per record doesn't mean the entire database is one record. My record, the one that's associated with me, is one record, and the record that's associated with Dane is another record. So you could have 50,000 records that's in your database, and every single one of them that was breached is a record,
yeah.
and each one of them would initiate an individual fine and an individual reporting and a potential individual lawsuit.
Yes, so really that kind of clearly explains the ROI of security.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do whatever you possibly can do to avoid a breach.
Right.
So, well, that's
Exactly.
very, very helpful. Thanks so much, Mark, and thanks for clearing that up, Professor Houpt. That's a wrap for episode 17. For those of you listening and who would like to be notified of upcoming podcasts, please let us know. Send us a note at CISO@databank.com. And if you have any other topic that you would like Mark and I to address, please send us a note indicating that as well. Well, that's a wrap for episode 17. And as always, be safe and stay secure.